Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a fifth growth from Pauillac. So we're in Bordeaux and this is Grand-Puy Ducasse. So it's a class growth in the fifth ranking of the class growths of the Médoc. So this is a chateau whose history goes back to 1675 when somebody called Arnaud Ducasse buys what is described as a modest house on the waterfront in Pauillac, in a little town about halfway up the Médoc, with the Gironde estuary there right to its front. I don't think most of us would think of it as modest, but it's not quite the grand chateau that many would expect from a top estate. And Grand-Puy Ducasse is unusual in that its house, its chateau, is separated from the vineyards. Now, most of the estate was built up by Arnaud's son Pierre, who actually managed to buy land in 3 communes from within what is now the Pauillac appellation. So they have land in Pauillac, they have land in Saint-Sauveur, and they have land in Saint-Lambert. So Grand-Puy Ducasse claim that they're the only estate to actually have vines in all the different terroirs of Pauillac. So to the north they have vineyards that neighbour estates such as Lafite and Mouton. In the central section there's a low hill, the Grand-Puy Hill, on which they have quite a lot of their Merlot and some, I believe, some Petit Verdot, because the soils there have a limestone subsoil that suits them. And then to the south, some of their other vines on the plain there border on close to Saint-Julien, and actually their vineyards are close to those of Pichon-Baron. So there's quite a spectrum, and the plantings are about 60-40 Cabernet Sauvignon to Merlot. Another interesting thing to note about Grand-Puy Ducasse is that in the 1820s they actually were one of the first estates to build their own cellars. So for a long period of decades, they were pretty much the only people in this part of the Médoc making wine in their own property. In 1855, the classification of the Médoc and Sauternes take place, and the chateau is classified as a fifth growth. It's subsequently renamed Grand-Puy Ducasse. It goes through quite a number of owners, including at one stage the Sudereau family from Sauternes. But in 2004, it's bought by C.A. Grand Cru, or the viticulture arm of the French bank Crédit Agricole. They've actually been able to continue investment to ensure that the estate is up to date with its technology. For instance, they continued work that was started in the 90s, where the vineyards had been reorganised so that the warmest, deepest gravels were where the Cabernet Sauvignon was growing, and that Merlot was replanted to those vineyards where there was more sand in the soils. And the result of that reorganisation, they've ended up with slightly more Cabernet Sauvignon being planted and the quality of that Cabernet Sauvignon being higher. Other investments have seen them work towards being organically certified, has seen them rebuilding the cellars and the barrel hall, which is an ongoing enterprise which is just about finished now in 2024. And as part of this, initially when C.A. Grand Cru purchased the property, they brought in Denis Dubourdu, who at that stage was the professor of oenology in Bordeaux University, to consult on the winemaking. Subsequently in 2013 they employed Hubert de Beauvoir, the owner of Chateau Angelus, and his consulting firm to oversee the production of the wine. And throughout this period there's been a perceived increase in quality here. Part of the investment that was seen, for instance, was in optical sorting machines, and those I believe have been purchased and used as standard now. So in a vintage like 2021, when ripeness could be an issue, those are quite useful tools to have in the winery. Now everything of course is hand picked. I believe the blend for 2021 was pretty much along the lines of the vineyard. So there's 62% of Cabernet Sauvignon in this and 38% of Merlot. One of the things that did happen with 2021 being a less intense vintage in terms of fruit ripeness was that they've only used 30% of new oak for aging, and the wine would have aged in French oak barriques, 225 litre French oak barriques, for 18 months. But as I say, with less than a third of that oak being new, so just toning down the oak influence a little for the vintage. Fermentation in general takes place in stainless steel tanks, although I believe they have been working with some cement egg fermenters as well. But generally the wine undergoes its malolactic conversion in tank as well, although a small proportion may do that in barrel, just to add a little bit of softness and roundness to the wine. So yes, I had a quick look at the Wine Searcher aggregated score for this wine, and it gets given an 88, which is not a bad score, I guess. But I'm intrigued to see whether perhaps people have been a little bit harsh on it. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? First thing to say, there's actually a really quite nice depth of colour there. It's not opaque, I can see the stem of the glass through the wine, but there's still quite a vibrant purple red colour. It's keeping that well to the rim. The wine is labelled as having 13% alcohol, I believe it may be 12.8, and it's not particularly showing heavy tears on the glass, it's barely showing any, to be honest, at this stage. So let's see what we think of the aromas, shall we? A really attractive, lifted red plum perfume. It really is quite vibrant. There seems to be a sort of slightly chalky note to it as well. But there is just such lovely lifted vivacity. I'm really quite impressed by that. So let's see what we make of the taste. On the palate, initially there's plentiful fresh acidity, and that's really bringing that sort of juicy plum nature of the fruit that we saw in the aromas onto the palate. It's mouth-watering. Being plums, there's that sort of velvety plum skin sort of texture, but actually there's a bit more depth to it than that. There's a real sort of velvetiness really asserting itself. There are chocolatey notes, and those are working really nicely in harmony. There's quite a richness here. We're not just talking about juicy, light red plums, we're talking about richer, darker notes there. And we're just starting to see with the freshness a little bit of slightly leafy cassis note coming through there as well, which actually would be more what I'd be expecting from Pauillac, and particularly from a wine that's predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon. But I'm having to look for it there a bit. At the same time, the texture and the richness of the wine is really quite enjoyable, and that's coming from the fruit. Remember, the alcohol here is only 13%, and it's, you know, that may be adding to the roundness a little bit. I'm not particularly seeing strong cedar notes. There's a fine grainy nature to the tannins, and then maybe just a little tiny touch of vanilla helping to round out the back palate there. But the oak is really beautifully harmonised with the fruit, and there is this sort of the grip, but there's a suppleness to the tannins, and the freshness is allowing some fresh red fruit to last quite nicely on the tongue. I think our aggregated score at 88 is perhaps being a little tough on this. Looking at that aggregation, that is of scores between 87 and 92, and I think I'm closer to the higher range, the sort of certainly up to 90, maybe even 91 on this. I think it's a wine with more depth than I expected. It's got a nice structure, and certainly it's got good freshness. 2021 is unlikely to be a vintage that's going to age for a long time. It doesn't have the guts and the depth that it'll need for that. This has got good structure, good acidity, and a nice open vivacious fruit that I think will see this well through for the next 10 years or so, and give some really enjoyable drinking. So thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more tastings, best answer would be to subscribe to our channel. It'd be fantastic to have your support. I will leave a link to the Wine Searcher website page for 2021 Grand Puy Ducasse in the notes below, so that you can follow that and find out more about pricing, availability, any information we have about the wine, its price history, and all sorts of elements such as that. If you've got any comments, please leave those in the box below. We would love to hear what you think about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. If you have friends you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. It'd be fantastic if you could forward it. But most importantly, if you have some time in the near future to come and join us for some more tastings, let's hope we'll see you again then. Thanks again. Bye for now.